All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Moonhawk Studios Presents. I am your very loud host, Mac Paladin. With me in the studio
Really
is my
loud.
yeah. With me in the studio, as always, is my good friend Adam.
I see you become aware of your lack of volume control.
I am always dialed to 11. I have to shout at this thing anyway because you guys are always complaining you can't hear me.
Be careful what you wish for.
Right? Kevin's in the hizzy.
Over here now. Hi.
Petty fan on the technicals.
Say the word and I can have him silenced.
Mm-hmm. I would strongly recommend against that. And of course, the wearer of dark-colored hats, the Golics.
Actually, they're not dark-colored because they're indescribable, and you're describing it.
Ah, okay. They're inscrutable.
It's. I got it from a book. It's just part of the thing.
Just roll with it. All right. Allegedly, we have a great show for you tonight, and we hope to actually commit to that. But in the meantime, Adam, bring us the news.
Right. So let's see. I suppose to start, cleanup efforts are progressing quite nicely. The front yard is finally cleared of debris. Took a while, but the I want to say lawn service, like whatever the wood carting people finally gathered up the debris in front and hauled it away. The trees out and back are still down. They've been reduced, but once again, the bodies of the trees are too big for any sort of amateur team to take care of. So the professionals are coming next, not this Friday, next Friday afternoon, 1st of November. It will be nice to have that sorted out. And the other important thing that I have done is I have finally cast my ballot. I had gotten it actually before the hurricane, but
Right.
that kind of delayed things.
Yeah.
But the important thing is the ballot has been filled out, signed, sealed, and put in the mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There you
So
go.
I've done my civic duty in the fight against fascism, and I assume everyone. I'm not joking, by the way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but yeah. I'm expecting to do mine tomorrow. So, I'm actually going out to the joint to cast it, so I'm expecting that tomorrow. So.
I wish we had early voting here in Missouri.
And well, that's been my week. So, Kevin, over to you.
Well, as per usual, it's going to be a quick one here. Like I just previously mentioned, I am expecting to go out and early vote later tomorrow. So I'm looking very much forward to getting that out of the way and locking my vote in. And if you all watch the returns in for the 14th Congressional District of Georgia, note that one of the people that will be voting for the Democrat there will be me. So let that be signed, sealed, and delivered, and let that be known. And I won't say any more than that because, well, you'll figure it out once you look it up.
Yeah.
Anyway. But, yeah, that's pretty much it around here. So, Petty, what's going on in your world?
Honestly, not a whole lot. The cover is now on the pool, so it is now patched up and covered up until May, so that's fun. That's handled. I was gonna see about going to a Digimon pre-release event this weekend, but unfortunately those plans had to be canceled because um, my mom and sister are going to a concert that day, and my other person who could have given me a ride has to do some car work. So, kind of unfortunate on that, but such is life. Um, but yeah, outside of that, not really a whole lot's been going on. So, Gullix?
Relatively slow for me too. My parents are away again. They're down helping my sister with the baby since her boyfriend has to go back to work. So they're helping with the transition, I guess. Um, it's been unseasonably warm this last week or so, but I guess it's supposed to get back to normal tomorrow. I also don't know if I'm going to be able to go to the Digimon pre-release thing this weekend because I have a family thing going on that I might want to do. I usually really try to do the family things, but this one was on slightly short notice, and I already had the Digimon. I mean, I can't control when the Digimon thing is, and I had something else I was going to do this weekend too. So, let's see. Not too much else, I don't think. In video games, getting ready for the Wizard Knight Ninja Splatfest and Splatoon 3. And also, apropos of very little, I decided to pick up. Well, I had already bought it, but I decided to give a try to Yars Rising since we interviewed Way Forward over on Fragments about it. And have been having a decent time with that. Turns out I'm pretty bad at the classic game Yara's Revenge, which is used as the hacking minigame throughout the game, which is a pretty frequent because you're a hacker and that's one of your main things that you do. And also the Metroidvania traversal powers. A few of them, the control inputs for them are a little bit awkward, but overall I would say pretty good. And I think that's all I've got.
Okay, well, I'm watching my cats attempt to violate each other. Tippy, Snowy, what the hell are you doing? I'm worried because Snowy keeps rabbit punching Tippy, and I'm worried he's going to get blinded because Snowy does not know how to retract his claws, as evidenced by the puncture wounds on my leg. From earlier today, when I was mopping the floors and sweeping and doing stuff, Snowy got agitated by my excess movements, and as a result, he had the zoomies, and he decided to jump with all 4 of his paws extended towards my leg, claws out, like he was going to climb a tree. So I'm sitting here watching my cats harm each other. But other than that, I've actually had a pretty good day. The little mini rant that I executed during the pre-show, notwithstanding, I've been, as is natural, I seem to waste 4 to 6 hours every day with customer service issues. I feel like my life is slowly, inextricably winding down the drain, dealing with corporate nonsense the world across, whether it's Amazon or the postal service or whatever. And as I said, I'm not going to actually repeat the rant, but I finally got my countercade unit for my Unisco Visco Games counter arcade, countertop, barcade, whatever the word is. There's a thing I want to do for my channel, and it's called Mac Paladin's Arcade Anarchy, and I want to showcase all of these different arcade style games and actual arcade units that I have acquired over the years. This Barcade unit is 12-in-1, and it's got some really cool licensed games, and it comes with an external controller and 8-inch screen and HDMI out, and I was really excited about it. And it just recently went on sale. And then there were issues. And folks, don't ever let your telephone number on Amazon expire.
No.
That's all I can say, is because then they give you the third degree. Well, what were your last 3 purchases? Well, I can't get into my Amazon account, so I can't tell you what my last 3 purchases were because I very rarely buy anything from you jackals. And then the lady hung up on me. Well, you didn't answer our challenge questions correctly, so, So, yeah, so that is the risk of buying things on Amazon. I have a Street Fighter 2 1-up arcade machine that has Championship Edition Super Street Fighter 2 and then Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And then I've got this thing from Visco Sales. I've got this Atari My Arcade unit that I got for a sweet deal. It's got like 200 games in it for $30. And I've been planning on expanding my retro gaming repertoire. That's a good word for it. On my own channel. I've been really sparse with streaming ever since Varias left the house. We were doing 2 sessions of FPS shenanigans a week where we were playing Paladins and Overwatch on Monday and Fridays respectively. And then I kind of stopped doing that, and I kept having all these little disasters. So I want to get back into doing the actual original theme of the channel, which is, playing retro RPGs and more casual arcade games and all that good stuff. And between all the floods and everything that have happened, I've just not had a lot of stuff to be happy about this year. The good news is that, as I said before, the second part of Starship Moonhawk is actually still performing well on YouTube, and I may get back to partner status at long last because of it. So yay! Only what? 99,000 more subscribers to go before I get my silver play button.
Huh.
But it'll be nice to be back to 1,000 and earn a little bit of change from my efforts. It'll all make it feel worthwhile when I finally, after 14 years, get that check from YouTube. In the meantime, I've gotten like 6 different payouts from Twitch, in spite of relatively low viewership. You would think that a person that had 40,000 readers on his webcomic would be able to manage more than 300 followers on Twitch, but advertising on Twitch is a lot harder than one would think. So we're working on that. Just holding on to 3,800 followers on my, shall we say, Blue Studio Twitter has been a monumental effort. Ever since the elongated muskrat took over the service, I have been struggling daily to keep over 3,800 followers. And it's like every day I look at it and there is this bounce rate of at least 17 to 25 followers. And then it goes back up over 3,800 and then it drops. And then it goes back up and then it drops. And there is 0 discoverability. And I haven't really figured out Blue Sky yet. So I'm not sure what to tell people on that front. But I do have a plan to get something going on at least one of my webcomics. I've actually been thinking about Starship Moonhawk short stories to kind of fill in the gaps while everybody's waiting for the animation to come out, which is a slow process. And of course, if I'm doing artwork for a webcomic again, that is going to take substantial time away from my ability to animate. But I did get the latest segment from Oshigan, so we can remaster the second half of part 3. I was going to make it somewhat shorter, but I realized that I honestly think 2 minutes and 41 seconds is going to be too short to have the same impact as the previous video, which I think was over 5 minutes. So, yeah. But the fact that he provided me with this artwork is going to make my life a lot easier. The only downside is he provided it in a single PDF, PSD file. So I have to separate out 12 shots into their own files before I can start animating them. Otherwise, it's going to be a nightmare. If you've ever used Adobe After Effects, for those of you in video editing and animating, you know the pain I'm about to describe in short here. But the more layers that you have to work with, the harder it is to separate them out into separate shots. Like you have to do a lot of dissecting in order to pull it out. You pull it in and it becomes footage, and then it leaves a folder with all these layers in it, and then you have to like separate those out into separate shots and hope you didn't do it wrong. And if you move anything, you've wrecked the whole thing. So the trials and tribulations of being an animation mogul in the modern world. But that seems to be the way everybody's going right now. It's all creator-owned content, building your own studios, not engaging with the traditional studio system. Especially since Netflix has basically doubled down and said we are not increasing our creator payouts ever. Just a lot of stuff. It's like they have this thing to where somebody brings them a show and they pay them like a flat $1 million or $2 million or whatever the hell it is, and that's it. If they buy your show and then they just own it. And a lot of these shows
that's apparently changing.
Oh, because I just read an article 2 days ago where they said they were doubling down on the fact that they weren't changing their buyout policy.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but they picked up the Digital Circus recently, a non-exclusive contract there. But it's the first indie animation that's appeared in syndication on Netflix.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe there is a silver lining on this cloud after all. But in the meantime, I'm trying to keep things under control, because that seems to be the smart way to go. As long as I retain ownership of it, I can control it creatively and make sure that it lives or dies with me, as opposed to living or dying at the whim of one of these providers like Netflix or Amazon. Because historically, new properties do not get more than one season with these guys. So
depends on what you want to define as a season.
Yeah. Well, they do their 10 to 13 episode binge thing or whatever, and then the whole thing.
Well, it's more, they'll do 8 to 10, call it episodes, call it a season, quote unquote, then do a season 2, which is actually the back half of the original season for the purposes of not paying residual.
That's an interesting it's an interesting model. But again, why I want to keep it creator controlled.
I'm sure we'll be talking more about this next season.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
Well,
especially if go ahead.
Well, the season opener, a couple of independent animation people.
Right. Yes. I think that's by and large everything I wanted to cover. Like I said, I've made some additional strides towards getting Arcade Anarchy ready. I have a little tiny bit more set up in my little arcade closet, as I like to call it. And I need to figure out where to put this Visco machine. because the place I had carved out for it on my desk doesn't have an available electrical outlet. And I've already plugged in 3 surge protectors into this outlet, which already has a 6 outlet expander on it. So
That's not good.
between all of the streaming lights and I mean, it's mostly all low wattage LED stuff, so it's not that big of a deal.
If you were using incandescence, your domicile would be on fire right now.
Yeah, I only have 1 incandescent bulb in this. No, I have 2. There's an ambiance light on the desk behind me. It's an old desk lamp that has a fancy Philips mood light lamp, mood light bulb in it. There's a name for it. It's in the boxes in the drawer behind me. I'm not going to belabor the point. And then I have a natural sunlight lamp in the top corner of the streaming room. It's mounted in a track light, and it gives this gives this nice little warm glow to the room without being invasive to all of my other lighting schemes. Also makes it easier to see in there for, my half-blind ass. So let's get this show on the road here. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest of the evening. We have David Mathis of Random Stranger and Famidaily.
Famidaily is the way I say it, short for Famicom Daily.
Okay. Tell us about your show and what you're doing.
Yeah. About 4 years ago, I got the rather stupid idea to catalog every single game released for the Nintendo Family Computer, the precursor to the NES released in Japan. And because I was really crazy, I decided to do it 1 video a day. There's 1,042 games on the platform. So it took me just under 3 years to do all of them, and in the end, I wound up doing 1,060 videos on the entire system. After that, I kept rolling because why stop there? Did the same thing for the Epoch Cassette Vision and Super Cassette Vision, the competitor to the Famicom, and then this year, I've slowed myself down a little bit and given myself almost every other day off as I've gone through a full year of the Famicom disk system, the expansion hardware.
Oh, wow.
Which personally is one of the most fascinating things about the Famicom's history to me. That they said, you know what, we're running out of room on cartridges. Let's instead make all our games on these disks, and we can sell them for cheaper and store more and save data more easily and stuff. And then, like, a few years later, they were like, actually, turns out we just got a lot better at making cartridges, so we don't need this anymore.
Oh, it wasn't even a full year before that happened. By the disk system was released in February of '86. By Christmas of that year, people were already starting to back away from it and get the expanded cartridges out there. By the end of 1987, people had kind of realized that the Famicom disk system was a dead end and it was a dying platform.
It's just really interesting that they developed this thing and then decide they didn't need it.
Well, Nintendo never really abandoned it, is the strangest thing about it. They didn't send it out there to die. They didn't just pull the plug on it and give up. They kept trying different strategies over the years to make it work. So Nintendo started putting out 2-disc games and see if they could get that for people. That was a strategy that went a bit badly for them because the 2 discs were released about a month apart for most of the games. Then they tried re-releasing old Famicom games at 500 yen a disc, using their disc rewriter kiosk platform, which were services in convenience stores and toy stores where you'd bring in the floppy disk that you had, pop it into the machine, put in your money, and it would change whatever game was on that disc to something else.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know about the 2-disc games. I knew about
They've
the
gotten a bit
rewriter.
of
I
a
didn't.
high profile lately because the biggest of those were the Famicom Detective Club series.
Ah, that makes sense. Those things have a lot of text and stuff.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know,
A lot of kanji.
as a career computer technician and retail manager, one of the problems I've always had with the Famicom disk system was the fact that anybody who's ever used a Mylar floppy disk knows, from a preservation standpoint, it's a nightmare.
Oh
Oh.
God, yes, especially
They're not
now.
actually Mylar floppy disks.
Now, I have a couple hundred floppy disks, and I don't think I have any bad ones. But I'm sure one will turn up at some point on me. I am surprised they continue to function as well as they do.
Well, like
It's
the
a- it's a-
drier
it's
the
a- it's a
climate, the
magnetic-
better it is for
well,
them.
It's
Hold
a
on, we're
magnetic
cooking over
tape disc in the middle still, right? Like usual for a floppy disk.
Yeah,
But
it's
the-
as he was saying, a Mylar disc with the magnetic medium on both sides.
Oh,
of it.
okay, gotcha. I thought you were talking about the outside of it, because the outside is a
No, they're still called
more
floppy.
rigid thing than the 5.5 inch or whatever floppies.
Right, it's more like the 3.5 floppy, but they didn't have the door on it except for the blue discs that came later and were associated with a special contest where people would fax their scores in from the games by popping the floppy into a different kiosk at stores.
Nice. For the edification of our younger audience out there, the quote unquote hard 3.5 inch floppy diskettes are still called floppy because it's about the inside medium, not the outside medium.
And no, they are not 3D printed save icons.
That's a statement that has some history behind it.
I almost went feral on my niece. It's fine.
All right.
I work with plenty of people who have never seen a 3.5 floppy before, so
You
I
can
should
blow
have
their
posted
minds
that
with
one
an
thing
8-inch.
to the main segment.
Yeah, blow
What's
their
his
minds.
drive?
Blow their minds with an 8-inch 64K floppy.
I've
Lord.
never even used them. I've only seen them once
Um,
when we were cleaning out a closet at the university.
I went to Southwestern Community College in Chula Vista, which, if I'm not mistaken, opened in 1962. And their computer division had a lot of antiquated equipment just laying around the campus. So I have actually physically seen them up close and in person. My dad even used them when he was programming with punch cards in '83. All right, let's get to the formal part of the interview here. Adam, I'm guessing you have some questions.
I'm like, I scarcely know where to begin because, well, I suppose we should start by quantifying. When you say a complete collection, you do mean a complete collection of Famicom cards.
I
Right.
have every single Famicom cartridge out there, yes. Anything that you could have gone into a store and popped down money for between July of 1983 and June of 1994, I've got it.
Wow. I should point out that is a absolutely monumental achievement. However, it's a little easier because, strangely, American cartridges and European cartridges have a lot more expensive collectability, don't they?
That's how it used to be. But in the past few years, people have caught on that collecting Japanese video games is cool, and the prices have shot way up. Fortunately, I was 99% done with my collection before that happened, but it still stung with some of those last few ones.
Okay.
And I suppose it's worth asking, what are some of the rarest, most expensive Famicom carts out there?
Okay. The rarest Famicom cartridge is one you'll have never heard of. It's called Ego Meikon. It's something you'd never want to play. It is a collection of professional Go games. Go, the board game where you place stones on the intersections. Yep. So these, about 100 or so of these games that are played professionally, and you can just watch it go through the game, and sometimes it will quiz you on which move is appropriate next. That part.
So it's actually worse than the 52-in-1 that has Cheetah Man.
Well, okay. I still kind of like it because I play Go, but Famicom collectors in Japan complain about the wall of Go games because it was part of a series of
Turns out it's a
7
really
titles.
easy game to mechanically to program. I imagine the strategy is harder, but
Yeah.
The AI.
Well, there's no AI in it, so that made it very simple.
Yeah, the AI is the big problem when it comes to Go, especially back then.
Oh yes,
but in terms of like the mechanics of placing pieces on the board, super easy, barely an inconvenience.
exactly. And
I've heard that line on TikTok a number of times. It doesn't mean what people think it means.
yeah, Ego
Right,
Macon costs right now about 30,000 yen, so it's not the most expensive Famicom cartridge. However, I have only ever seen 2 copies for sale, and I own one of them. So,
wow.
it is what I consider to be the rarest Famicom game. Now, at this point, the most expensive ones are ones that people might be a little bit more familiar with. Gimmick, also known as Mr. Gimmick. That tends to be the most expensive, costing about 50,000 yen a cartridge these days. The Taito, the final few Taito games, Bubble Bobble 2, Captain Saver, which would be Power Blade 2 in the US, those are about 40,000 yen. Ones that you wouldn't expect, Akuma Joe Dracula. As a cartridge, well, as a floppy disk, you can get it for about 3,000 yen. That's that's a price that's gone way up lately. As a cartridge, it's over 30,000 yen because it was released very, very late on the Famicom as in cartridge form, and so it's hard to get.
Interesting.
So, how much did your collection end up costing?
I would estimate it wound up being about $15,000 total.
You know, all things considered, that's still pretty good.
Yeah, well, I'm also a cheapskate. I got some deals. I took advantage of things, and I got in before the prices tripled. So,
Yeah, like I think that's something that's gotten not just kind of lost, very lost in today's world. But you go back 10, 15 years ago and collecting not just like Famicom cards, but collecting NES cards was outside of, some stuff like the later Taito game, it was on the NES, pretty cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I
mean,
because not many people were doing it.
Yeah. And also they were just seen as old. Like, this is well before the speculators came into the market. Like,
well, with
the people with the grating and the plastic cases and all that shit.
I mean, I suppose that's a factor, but I mean, I would say that the larger factor is the fact that for a hot minute, Nintendo was actively putting a lot of these games onto the virtual game stations and various
And Nintendo's still doing that,
but they're vaulting a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of rights issues too with stuff that they've lost the rights to.
It's actually gotten better in that regard, because on the NSO we're seeing games that haven't been released since their original release, or stuff that's never come over. Like, a good recent example is the poster child for Kusoge, Atlantis no Naze.
Oh, Atlantis no
got a-
Nazo isn't even in my bottom 10.
I know,
Poster
but
child
played
doesn't
so
necessarily
much
mean the
worse.
most extreme. It just means one of the best known.
yeah, it's one of the titles that is just kind of attached to the word in general. Not necessarily the worst. I'm just saying it's one of the unknown quantities versus what would you consider to be the worst Famicom game?
The worst Famicom game is probably... Oh, how do you say this guy's name? It's Princess Ga Ipai, but it's a comedian's name. The gist of it is it's a very, very bad platformer that somehow was developed by HAL Laboratory. But the story behind it is even more horrifying because the real life person is a sex predator, and the princesses of the title are real young girls.
Oh God.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
It's like
So just
Getting
owning
it-
So
it
in
is
addition to
dangerous.
not being very good, it's also kind of ouch.
Yeah.
Just owning it is problematic.
yeah,
It's a game that I don't spring on people, yeah.
okay.
What about the I forget, is Takashi's Challenge on the NES or Famicom, or is that one of the other ones?
Yeah, Takeshi no Chosenjo is on the Famicom.
So that's also one of the one of the poster children for. But that's the question then. How do you grade that? Because it was trying to be bad on purpose.
It wasn't trying to be bad on purpose. It was Takeshi went on a lunch with the developers from Taito, and over the process of the lunch, he got extremely drunk. Which I think, if you know his personality, isn't a surprise. But he just shot out ideas, and these developers felt obligated to put them all in the game. And so you get every single crazy bad idea possible in this one adventure game.
Oh my.
I think the most entertaining one is to complete the game, you have to get a treasure map, and as part of that, to find the location of where the treasure is, you have to display the map on your screen and then let the game sit for an hour.
Like,
So it's completely asinine.
So yes, maybe not intentionally bad, but a lot of the things are either intentionally obtuse, or at least obtuse in the way that you would only think of them if you were,
A drunk comedian?
yeah.
I suppose it is also worth noting that there was a period of Famicom development where being intentionally obtuse was just the style of the time.
That's
Thank
true.
Yeah.
you, thank you, Tower of Jiraga.
Yeah, it all comes down to Tower of Jiraga, basically, and everyone trying to copy that for a few years. 86 and 87, if you were playing a Famicom game in that period, you pretty much needed a walkthrough to complete it.
Yeah, I'm like,
Right.
I'm glad that we were kind of spared that wave of Famicom development. I mean, we certainly got some things like the Goonies 2, Xanadu, etc., like Eight Eyes.
I mean, the Goonies 2 is generally regarded as being a pretty good game aside from that.
Goonies 2
like, I have
plays
the Goonies-
wonderfully in the action segments, and then you get into those adventure segments, and it's a case of just try everything, and unfortunately, that's how it worked then.
Watch the Angry Video Game Nerds review of it.
Yeah,
He's like, he says the adventure segments of the game are basically the definition of bang your head against the wall.
I'm like, we had the Goonies 2 when I was a kid, and that's a good description of it. Like, it's just
I
yeah,
don't know how I did it, but I beat the damn game.
yep.
probably the most infamous game from that period is Elnark no Zaiho. And it is a game so absurd and obtuse that when someone finally managed to beat it, they got on national television in Japan. And they managed to beat it. They were the first person to beat the game, and they beat it in 2003.
I'm like that's a statement.
Somehow a satellite chip inside the game notified the developers that somebody had completed it.
Yeah. I'm like,
Oh, God.
yeah. So, on the inverse side of things, what would you say are the most common Famicom games, and what would you rate as the best?
Well, the most common, baseball, mahjong. The Nintendo cartridges from the first couple of years are very common, just because that was a boom time and there was very little software there, so everybody got every single game that came out. So you'll find piles of copies of golf and pinball. When it comes to the best, a lot of them are the obvious ones. You can't go wrong with something like Super Mario Bros. 3. But to get a little bit more obscure, I always like digging into the stuff that occurs toward the end of the console's life.
Right.
There's brain catch up here. Was it Magina no Toro? Mitsume ga Toro. That's it. It was a Natsume developed action game based on an Osamu Tezuka comic, and it's just got a really wonderful system where you blast through everything. Also released on the same day was Summer Carnival 92 Rekka, tied for most expensive Famicom game, but if you want to see how somebody can pull off bullet hell on an 8-bit system, you have to see it to believe it.
The number of sprites limit would be a little bit rough for that, wouldn't it?
Yes. It is astounding that they managed to get it to work.
I mean, there's a lot of late-stage Famicom games where it's kind of amazing that this is being done on the Famicom.
It goes right up to the last release, Takahashi Meiji no Boken Jima 4, or Adventure Island 4 if you want to use the US localization. That is a really exceptional Metroidvania-style game. A huge area to fill out, astounding game, and it's also the most poor-selling Hudson Soft game ever, because it was the last Famicom game. Most of the copies that got out into the wild were actually given away as prizes on a game show.
Oh, wow. I think a lot of that expandability was because in those late stage games, they started adding actual hardware inside the cartridges.
Yeah, they started doing that pretty early on, or relatively early on. By
that was the reason why they didn't need all of. That was a lot of the reason why they didn't need the extra stuff that the disk drive could do.
Yep.
Yeah, if you want to know,
because they developed better stuff to put inside the cartridges.
Yeah, if you want to know what the ultimate form of the stock Famicom hardware is, it's Super Mario Brothers. That is the most that the baseline Famicom could do.
That's a good one to use. There's a couple others that might push the sprite limit a little bit harder, but Super Mario Brothers is about as good as you're going to get.
Yeah, I'm like, and anything beyond that is using what they call the memory maps, which are the co-processor chips that made the games more powerful and allowed for things like slopes and diagonal scrolling.
Diagonal scrolling was actually done in right on Bungling Bay, which was like the 15th or 16th Famicom cartridge.
Oh, surprised.
Yeah. Most people don't expect it to show up that early. But that's Will Wright for you.
True. Though I'm not sure how much consulting he did on the NES or Famicom.
Well, they
version.
took his. He developed it for the Commodore 64, and almost all of the development for Famicom games was on the Commodore 64 because it uses.
Right.
I'm not gonna say the exact same processor because Nintendo stripped some features out for the price on theirs, but you can see pictures of Famicom development stations, and they're just Commodore 64s with giant boards sticking out the back.
Right. I suppose another thing to ask are the peripherals of the Famicom, because there are a lot of peripherals for that beast.
Oh yes, probably
So-
the most interesting one are the 3D glasses, the Famicom 3D system. They are a pair of LCD-based glasses, and by LCD I mean actual liquid crystal in the lenses, not LCD panels,
Right.
like a modern television.
Well before that, those things were invented.
Yep. So you apply a current to it, and it turns black. So it would alternate this 30 times a second for each eye, only one eye open at a time, and because the screen was displaying a alternating pattern at that same rate, you got two different images and could resolve them into something 3D. Rad Racer, or to use the US title, or Highway Star, is probably the best example of a game that uses this.
I remember the NES version of it, and it's not as good 3D, let's say.
I have a
Yeah, they
feeling that
used
this would make me
anaglyphic for the
vomit
NES
violently.
Yeah. Well, they use the anaglyph red and blue method.
I actually
I
played.
remembered I had that game and never had the actual glasses for it.
Annoyingly, Square flipped the red and blue for their anaglyphic games.
So if you had actual 3D glasses, you have to wear them upside down?
Or if you've got paper ones, fold them backwards.
I don't know. Every time I tried playing those, I felt like I was having a stroke.
Well,
I get eye strain
rough on
myself
some
after
people.
about 15 minutes, so I am a bit limited on how long I can go with them.
These days, with my astigmatism, I just wear blue blockers everywhere.
I have those
I like
built
not,
into my
I like
glasses.
not having halo. What?
I have those built into my glasses.
Now, if you want weird Famicom controllers, perhaps the oddest is the Pachinko controller. It looks like a Famicom controller, so that's a bit thicker and has a giant bulb on one side that has a grip similar in style to a Pachinko machine.
Because that's what it's for.
Exactly. So for some of Coconut Japan's later Pachinko games, you could turn that dial and have an analog control input for your Pachinko.
For people who are really into the feel of Pachinko.
Yeah. That is something that wound up getting carried forward a lot because in the 90s, Japanese consoles loved having Pachinko games.
I don't really have a statement beyond that. Pachinko is such a Japanese thing.
It's a weird situation where, as the Famicom was wrapping up, one of the games released for it, a very, very, very bad RPG, Otaka no Seiza, wound up killing the Pachinko industry. The reason for that is it was intended to be a multimedia blitz with a animated feature, the video game, and a Pachinko machine, but instead of making a regular Pachinko machine, they made a video slot machine that had some very minimal Pachinko elements added to it.
Pachinko's do include slot elements, but it's not the main thing.
Exactly. And
they were just ahead of the curve.
Right, and within 2 or 3 years, Mechanical pachinko was dead, and those slot machines were the only thing that was out there.
Pull the lever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once again, I don't really have a statement because I've never engaged in pachinko.
Oh, you're better off for it.
So I'm told. But what about... Did the Famicom ever have like an equivalent to the NES Advantage or the NES Max?
Well, not one released for by Nintendo, but ASCII, which was a relatively major company, they published some games, but made a lot of peripherals and also published magazines. They made a arcade-style joystick that the Max was, that the Advantage was probably based on. It's got a lot of the same form factor, but it's even bulkier and heavier and uses real arcade parts.
I'm like, that actually sounds desirable.
Yeah, they go for a bit now. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that has spiked in price. If I had thought to snatch one up 4 years ago, I would have paid about 50,000 yen, and now it's closer to 20,000.
And I suppose it's also worth asking about, some of the most infamous / famous weird NES peripherals and their Famicom equivalents, i.e. the Power Pad, the Power Glove, and the U-Force.
Well, the Power Pad is a weird situation because, of course, Nintendo bought it from Bandai, who had it already released in the US, under their own form, but it got quickly pulled. In Japan, it was the exact same unit, but called the Family Trainer. And Bandai made an enormous series of games that took advantage of it. 12 games in total. Most of them you probably wouldn't even want to look at. And naturally, stadium events, or running stadium as it's called in Japan, is one of them. One of the games is Jogging Race, which can tell you something about how exciting the series is.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what the Power Pad was sold as. A exercise trainer. We Fit a good 20 years early.
There's quite a few people who have tried to merge exercise equipment and video games, and sometimes sometimes with better luck than others.
I'm like, the Wii has a game that connects to an actual exercise bike.
So does the Super Nintendo, and there is a special model of the Genesis that's designed solely for an exercise bike.
I'm like, that's an idea that just kept refusing to die, I guess.
There's a treadmill-style controller for the PlayStation. That was packaged with a game called, I think, Let's Jog. So I guess jogging is just stuck with it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not unusual in the industry. I watched an extensive video about I want to say it was a 2018 Sega computer that was designed around off-track horse betting. I don't know if you've ever seen,
we have any
like virtual casinos that they have set up in Japan where they'll have like stations where you can sit and bet on imaginary horse racing. And
well, why would you need to do that with a Sega computer when you could plug in your Famicom's modem and do that?
Yep.
That was a feature offered in 1988, coming out just a couple weeks before Super Mario Bros. 3.
Oh my god.
If you use the stock trading chip cartridge, it's a little card similar to the PC Engine for those. Then Mario would do a little dance if your stocks went up.
That is a very Nintendo thing.
Yep.
It's just funny because you see video game cropping up in rather unexpected markets. And this has been a thing since the beginning.
One thing I think people sometimes miss is that video game consoles are really computers, and a lot of people have tried over the years to merge those, to bring those two together.
Often to disastrous results.
Well, let's not talk about Coleco.
The Coleco Mini is it killed the company.
But ColecoVision.
Yeah, the family computer in this case, there's actually a version made by Sharp that is got the keyboard built in, has a version of BASIC on it, and runs Famicom cartridges. Then we get into weird stuff like the PC Engine has a printer and an art tablet. The Sega Saturn has a word processor. So people keep trying.
At least for a bit of time. These days, it's all USB. Like you can connect a actual, mouse and keyboard to your modern day consoles.
It does bring things a little bit closer together.
No less awkward though, just because of that form factor. Anyway, so I suppose another question is, do you have plans to do the same treatment to the NES library?
Well, when is this going up?
We're broadcasting
sometime in
out
the next
right now.
week.
Oh no!
Though it is live right now.
Yeah, we're alive. We're alive.
Okay. Let me say that I am going to do something with the NES library, and it will come before the end of the year.
Huh. That's okay. That could be many a thing.
Yep.
Like, especially since
Itemized list of a video where I say why I'm not covering each one.
That is coming on December 31st. And I'm only half joking on that one.
Oh boy. I'm like, well, I mean, you could also make a lateral move and cover the SG-1000.
Yep. I've got the next console planned. I'm going to say it's not going to be Sega, just because I feel that it has been done extremely well, and I would be redundant.
Say Gaiden?
Exactly.
I can see it. Like, and
well, I never want to have to think about what other people are doing. I need to do my own thing. At the same time, there's enough overlap there that I'm looking at and go, okay, I don't need to be in that space. I can find different space for me.
Fair enough.
Of course, I'm pretty sure eventually he's going to cover everything, so...
Yeah, but there I'm
unless he
outpacing
dies
him.
first.
I'm outpacing Jeremy Parrish by a lot.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean...
and I can say that because I've teased him about it.
Well, he's doing a lot more in-depth work.
Yes.
Like, the average NES Works episode is 15, maybe 30 minutes, depending on the subject matter.
Yep, and I generally am between 6 and 10 minutes per game.
Right. Well, I'm assuming that's how you keep this daily or close to daily, depending.
No, don't look back. Don't stop moving. Just keep going.
I mean, it seems to be working because there are a lot of chronological series that don't make it. Looking at you, PlayStation Year One.
That was a huge concern for me when I started. I knew that I wanted to get to the end. If everybody can talk about the first year or two of a console and then get tired and peter out, but if I was going to make it to the end, I couldn't get distracted. I had to move fast enough that life would not stop it. And that's what I managed to do. So far, so good. I've decided next year I'm going to an every other day schedule just for my own sanity. But that's still pretty fast compared to a lot.
Right.
You're gonna have to
Well, it's
change your
also
name though.
like
Family every other daily doesn't go right.
Yeah, I'm dropping the daily part for the next one.
uh, fa- whatever bi-daily, twice weekly or whatever. Like, but it's also the choice of console because you didn't pick the Virtual Boy, the Jaguar, the 32X. Insert system here that had a very small library. You picked the Famicom, the dominant system in Japan in the 1980s,
Yeah,
which has a huge library.
Mm-hmm. I felt like it was a good exploration of the entire industry throughout that 10-year period. Because when the Famicom was released, you still had the dominant form of arcade game were still single screen score attack games. And that's what you got on the Famicom. And then it kind of paralleled things, eventually taking over as the major gaming platform, and then handing off to other systems and other platforms toward the end. So, start in the early days of the arcade, end just a couple months before the PlayStation's released.
Yep. Like, people don't realize how long the Famicom/NES lasted. I mean, they both died about the same time. Like, though I'd argue that the NES got the better send, if only because the NES got Star Tropics 2.
Star Tropics 2 is pretty good. Yeah, the NES had 2 games that came out after the Famicom ended, so it managed to outlive it that way. Which, similarly, I think the PC Engine only outlived the Famicom by about 6 months as well.
Yeah. I'm like, we're in like Atari 2600 territory in terms of actual years lived.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, are there any systems that are strictly off limits to covering due to one reason or another?
Well, I'm not going to say that nothing is ever completely off limits, but I looked at the Bandai Playdia and said, nope, it is all very bad multimedia games based on licensed properties where I would play it and go, yeah, this is the same as all of the other ones. It's really bad. Don't look at it.
See also the PCFX, I think.
PCFX got pushed away based on that. The going into some of the systems that people might, actually get attracted to my channel with, the Super Famicom, the PlayStation, the Game Boy, the libraries are so massive that it would be 10 years of my life to catalog all of them.
Oh, especially
At best.
Yeah. It would be very, very difficult, and at this point, there's a real chance, I could be dead before finishing them. So let's avoid that.
Right. And I suppose like computer platforms are right out.
I put a very serious consideration into figuring out how I could do IBM PC compatibles through the 90s. Trying to work out a way that could work. My concept was take Computer Gaming World and only play games that supported VGA, and then start in '89 with that and work my way forward until Steam. And just cover the games that were in the magazine. This way I hit all the major releases roughly in chronological order. And use that. I'd miss a lot, but it could work. That one felt like I would be pulling my hair out dealing with technical challenges, though.
Oh God, yes.
Probably. I'm like, if you want to decrease and increase that respectively, you could do a retrospective on the OS2.
But then I have to talk about Stardock games.
Also, people would wonder about your mental state.
I mean,
I used to work in the building where they made OS2.
Damn.
Yeah.
Boy.
ooh,
Kind of the loneliest people at IBM.
condolences. Like, I'm thinking more like the Commodore 64, the MSX.
There was like 3 minutes back in 1995 where I was like, gosh, I need to build me an OS2 warp system.
I never got to
lasted
that
3
point, at
minutes
least.
on that one.
And then I realized no, I actually enjoy living. Halted that
Indeed.
project immediately.
Like,
I hear 2025 is going to be the year of OS2 warp on the desktop.
just like it's going to be the year of Linux. Any year now. I'm sure that age of Aquarius is finally going to hit.
Well, 12 out of 13 of the computers I'm currently running in my animation array are incompatible with Windows 11, so I'll probably be throwing Linux on those before long.
You'll have to get a new one of those next year.
As for MSX and the C64, like you mentioned, it's a situation where figuring out a method to make a chronology of them work is tough. I'm not going to say it's impossible because those are ones that I've poked at. Same thing for PC-88. Just because PC-88 is a system that doesn't get a lot of discussion except for the Basement Brothers. I plugging other people's cool channels here as I go. But it's something to consider, but probably not right away.
What about handhelds?
Handhelds. Game Gear, I like to play on original hardware. I don't have a way to consoleize a Game Gear.
Mm-hmm. Kind of
I-
probably one of
You're gonna have
those
to mod
similar
that.
with Wonder Swan or something like that.
There is actually someone who is almost finished with a Wonder Swan chronology.
Damn.
Yeah,
It'd be
unfortunately, their
interesting
videos.
if
Okay.
technically it should. You'd think it would be possible to make like a Game Gear to Master System adapter, right?
Oh, hold up. First of all, there is one available on Temu right now. It's in my shopping cart. And second of all, some Sega Master Systems had a module where you could actually plug Game Gear cartridges into them.
I thought they only went the other way with that. Master System to Game Gear.
I mean, that was the prevailing theory, but apparently somebody made a module for it, and that I believe is also available on.
Well,
Temu.
good for them. Now I'll have to get one.
Well, content's back on the menu, boys.
Yep.
But this cartridge that I found is actually for the Sega Genesis. You can plug your Game Gear cartridges into this cartridge and plug it into your Sega Genesis, and it will apparently play.
Oh, somebody did some bad things to a master base converter.
Yep. But it's in cartridge form, so it's more convenient and a lot less expensive. I didn't mean to kill
what
the
about
conversation.
No, it's fine. It's fine. What about the Game Boy?
Everybody's contemplating.
Game Boy. Game Boy has way too many games. It is a situation where there are. I have the number in front of me. 1,057 Game Boy games by my count. Probably could filter some out or go with that, but that's just in the preliminary planning phase. Something I've been considering.
If you did it daily, it would only take like 3 years.
Boy, I've never done anything like that before. The best part is when I get to the end and do all the Doraemon no Study Boy games.
Oh God.
I only have half of those too.
Well, that gets even. Well, on the flip side, you could just do Game Boy Color only.
Well, the thing about this is I do kind of want to do some
know what it's and did it disconnect? No, we're good. We're back.
Live broadcasting.
Yep.
Live broadcasting. It
You may
doesn't like it,
continue.
ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Anyway, you were saying
So
about
let me
Denji
jump back
Depot.
a the line here. So that video came about because I said everybody loves Densha Day Go, but there's all these other train games that nobody ever talks about. I should make a video about those other train games. Except, of course, I'm the only person who ever talks about Densha Day Go and force other people to talk to me about Densha Day Go. So I wound up making a whole hour-long section in that video just about Densha Day Go.
Like, and what were the other train games?
Train Simulator is the big one because that was a computer game series that actually predated Densha Day Go and it's likely inspired it.
I'm assuming A Train showed up as well.
No, because I specifically stuck just to games where you drove trains. I didn't want to get into like the 1830 series, for example. There's a lot of games out there about building railroads. I mean, more than you realize, and to the point where they even predate computers. So if I went down that rabbit hole, I could be there a long time.
Yeah. Once again, not that surprising given how popular, railroad models have been, for decades. Like, anyway, so what are some of the other weird ideas you've had, that have and have not come to fruition?
Maybe the weirdest block I've done in the past year is I came across a reference while working on a video about a disc system game, Pro Golfer Saru, where its Wii game was the worst reviewed game in Famista magazine history. And so I went, well, I have to play it now. So I made a video on it. But then it turned out it wasn't the worst reviewed game in Famista magazine history. It was tied with two other games as the worst game in Famitsu magazine history. So I had to play those two as well. So I've got a 3-part series on these games that, one of them is extremely bad, one of them is puzzling, and then the Pro Golfer Saru game, well, if you paid full price for it when it came out, you'd probably be upset. But if you got it for $5, it's a fun little mini game.
Like, that's not that unusual because I've seen variants. Like, I played the lowest rated game on Steam or the lowest rated game on Metacritic, that kind of thing. Like, so, what else?
Let's see, I did a single video on the Atari 2800 and every game released for it. That was the version of the VCS released in Japan shortly after the Famicom was released. So that didn't turn out well for Atari.
Yeah, Atari never clicked with Japan. Like,
they made a few attempts at it. The Lynx actually got some traction. Not a whole lot, but it did get a bit of a fan base in Japan.
I could see it because, the Lynx was the most technologically powerful handheld there for a good year. I suppose it depends on whenever the Turbo Express came out. But
I think that was 92.
Yeah. But, it was a good year. The Lynx came out in 1989, assumed like 1990 in Japan, and 91 for the 1991, like a year later for the Game Gear.
Game Boy was 89.
Yeah. Like, I remember talking about the Game Boy recently and how it was in a weird position of simultaneously being the most advanced thing in handheld gaming for a good few months, and also being, woefully behind the time because the Lynx is almost contemporaneous with it.
Well, the Lynx was developed for sale in '86, and then Atari bought it from Epix and sat on it to drive them out of business.
And what are some of the ideas that haven't worked out?
Oh, I had a video that I was working on. I've got about 10 hours of footage where I try to beat Daggerfall without any patches installed. I don't know if you've ever seen the patch notes for Daggerfall, but they are a multi-megabyte text file.
It's a Bethesda game.
Oh yeah, my personal favorite patch note from the very first patch is skeletons no longer walk backwards.
Look, that's hitting under par when it comes to some of the bugs that Bethesda games have. And it's not a new experience either.
No, I rushed out and got Daggerfall the day it was released, and then spent the next few days trying to make it out of the first dungeon without the game completely trashing everything.
Daggerfall is the one before Morrowind, right?
Correct.
Yes. That's the second in the Elder Scrolls series. Like, you can get it for free these days.
So you have to have the original CD, like I still have mine, if you wanted to play it with all the bugs intact.
I'm like, well, that's a form of game preservation. I'm like, underrated, but still important. Like, actually having like the original version of a game. And
it's a real problem with computer games because a lot of the preserved versions that are out there are hacked.
And a lot. Well, the thing is, a lot of these updates are done for quote unquote a reason, namely, it was broken. It would crash or something. It's still, therefore, they are unsuitable for consumer consumption in a lot of cases.
Right.
But it's still useful to see, from developmental purposes, how that shit happened.
Right, or they're like Valve's games, like Half-Life 2. The version that you can purchase on Steam, it came out day one. Like, I'd
Lost
recommend
most of
digital.
that line, Adam.
No,
the version you can play on Steam, something day one.
Yeah, the version that you can get on Steam these days is not the version that came out day one because of Steam and its instant, its patching system. Like, Digital Foundry has a really good episode on it. Like,
yeah, that's one of the challenges with digital distribution is it's not very compatible with preservation.
It's complicated. I'm like, not the least of which is because, I know several people who work in that very field. Like, and, like people at Night Dive, Digital Eclipse, they are working within the confines of the digital space to preserve things as best as they can. But yeah, it's not easy. Like, granted, physical has its issues as well.
Yep. Well, preservation, you wind up getting complicated because what the average consumer wants in preservation is different from what a researcher or historian wants out of preservation. They're kind of two opposing forces there.
Well, that is an important distinction, I think, that doesn't get brought up quite enough. Because when people say that stuff isn't, preserved or whatever, they mean, accessible. They mean, you can go and buy it. Versus, there is a copy in a museum somewhere. That is actually a different conversation because, there are archives all over the world that are dedicated to this very thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the same thing as being able to play, say, Little Samson on a modern day system. And people tend to conflate the two. Like, it's just a pet peeve of mine. Like, hello?
I'm
We're
here.
still
It's
we're still here.
okay.
Okay,
I just didn't have anything to add.
Just wanted to make sure the connection didn't get out there. Like, now, do you do anything in regards to modern day systems or gaming?
Just play. I feel like there's so many people talking about modern day stuff. My voice would just get lost in it. If I'm going to say something, I need to have something different, something that I'm bringing to the table that other people aren't. And
I
so,
suppose that's a fair assessment.
yeah, other people do great jobs with it. I don't need to. Did I lose you guys?
No, we're still here.
Someone
Okay.
dropped and
No,
came
we're
back.
here. Like,
Adam dropped
once
for a
again,
second.
I think the connection's getting a bit wonky.
Adam dropped for a second and then came back.
Speaking of such things, we should probably wind the interview down because it's hitting 1 o'clock.
Mm.
Yeah. 1 o'clock Eastern.
Sorry, we
Have you
love
heard?
talking to you. It's just
Well, I enjoy talking to you.
Adam is dropping.
Yeah, Adam's connection is kill.
Hi, Adam. Welcome back.
Yeah, what happened to the connection there? Like, can you hear me?
We can now.
We can hear you now.
Anyway, as I was trying to say, we should probably wind this down because it's 1 o'clock.
Yep.
We did
Yeah,
actually
we
hear
heard that. We heard
Okay.
that, yeah.
Well, I guess on to entertainment news. Like,
All right. So before we do that, hold on a second. David, I really appreciate you coming on the show and indulging with our eccentricities.
Well, thank you. It was wonderful talking to everyone.
Yeah,
Yes.
we
should do it
feel
again
like,
sometime.
I feel like we got a lot of great stuff. Give everybody a shout for where they can find you and what you're doing next.
Sure, my videos are on YouTube. The channel's Random Stranger, but just RndStranger. Probably the easiest way to find it is to search for Famdaily. Right now, I am posting videos just about every other day on a Famicom Disk System game, and that's going to go through the end of the year when I will start another series on January 1st covering another big Japanese game system.
All right. Well, I really thank you for being with us tonight and being such a good sport. And hopefully we'll be able to have you back when there's new developments.
Thank you. It was great talking to everyone. Good night.
All right. Now we can move to entertainment news. All right, Adam.
So I suppose, yeah. So I suppose the first thing we should mention is Marvel. Because Marvel has announced their 2025 slate of movies. And it's not so much
on it.
Yep. Blade has officially entered indefinite hiatus.
Yep.
And we don't know exactly what's going on. Now, people have been very quick to blame Marvel's brain trust for whatever problems are going on the Blade. I'm like, but the fact of the matter is, we actually don't know. We literally do not know what's been going on with the Blade. Like,
there's been some interesting fan speculation that goes along the idea that Wesley Snipes' appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine has made people really start thinking about possibly bringing him back for a fourth outing.
it's possible. I'm like, it might depend on how stretchy the multiverse is.
Right.
Because it's also a question of trying to make a vampire story work in the MCU. Like, not just like a rated R thing, but,
Mm-hmm.
to some extent, why is no one else working on this?
I've also heard supposition as like the directors or the lead actor has been a bit of a pill. Like I said, it's all speculation. All we do know is the Blade movie got announced quite a long time ago, and just kind of been stuck in development hell.
Yeah, and people's memories are a little slipshod. But in fairness, most people didn't watch Eternals. But there was already a preview of Blade and what was it? The Black Knight.
I think so. It's like missed Eternals.
Kit Harington was supposed to play him because they previewed the sword, and you heard Mahershala Ali's voice as Blade in the tag at the end of the credits.
Yeah,
the mid credits tag or whatever.
I'm like, well, guess one day I will watch Eternals. But
it's not a terrible movie. It's just not that exciting. It kind of drags. It's almost 3 hours, and it doesn't deserve it.
Yeah,
the Eternals didn't earn that right.
I mean, that things I kept hearing about.
Yeah,
big slog.
You're roboting.
It could be the whole saga and retool saga, or because we don't know how all the hooks were going to pan out.
Yeah,
and I think people have kind of forgotten that. Oh, right, the Marvel MCU just got a huge fucking overhaul.
Yeah. Well, now people are another thing that people are suggesting that I just read an article about is that they're actually doing. Oh, we lost Adam. Adam, can you hear me?
Hello?
No,
all right, can you hear me?
Yeah, as I was saying.
Okay. Yeah, they didn't know how the hooks were going to pan out. That's the last thing we heard, and then you kind of cut out.
Yeah, we don't know how Blade was going to connect to all that, so maybe that's related. Like I said, there's very little that we do know, so of course the void is going to be filled with a lot of speculation and a lot of angry chud speculation at that.
Well, Tom Holland did go on Jimmy Fallon and confirm Spider-Man 4. And there's some significant credence to the idea that, God damn it, there's some significant credence to the idea that World War Hulk is coming. That Marvel may try to work. Disney may try to work things out with Universal to make this happen.
Possibly. I do know that he did confirm Spider-Man 4 because, of course, that was going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. I mentioned he said you did hear me say that Tom Holland confirmed it on Fallon a couple of nights ago.
Yeah, I did not hear that.
Okay,
my connection's getting spotty.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so that was interesting. So we've got some interesting realignment items to consider.
Indeed, it's just we won't see until next year how it all plays out because Deadpool and Wolverine is the only Marvel movie we got this year. Though Agatha All Along is playing out right now,
and it's a runaway hit. People are absolutely raving about it.
I'm like, I would not go that far. It's more memorable than, say, Echo, but I wouldn't put it above WandaVision.
Well, it's more like it's as good as WandaVision. I wouldn't say it's better than, but as far as in recent times since WandaVision, this is the closest thing they have to a runaway hit.
I mean, that makes sense. This is this is like the direct sequel to it.
Well, that and I've been watching it all along, and it's the introduction of Wiccan is pretty interesting. The question will be if they're going to also bring back Speed.
I'm like, anyway, so of course, this was going to happen news. Several of the streaming companies or their parent organizations are suing the FTC because the FTC just finalized a new rule that would allow you to quit a streaming service very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And can't imagine why they'd be pissed at that.
We start glancing menacingly at Adobe.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're not really a streaming service, but they're the one most pissed about this.
Right, but I'm not sure if they're in the actual lawsuit.
Oh, they probably have one. Let's be real.
True enough.
Because their dark patterns and bullshit like that is got them in some hot water.
You're not wrong. Apparently Eva Longoria is quite the indie movie maverick. Because she gave the John Wick, the first one, $6 million in funding and saved the movie less than 24 hours before it would have shut down.
Fine.
This was probably a good idea.
Yeah. Well, it's also because you would not be expecting that funding coming from one of the Desperate Housewives. She was on that program, right? Or was it Grey's Anatomy?
No, it was that. Yeah, it was Desperate Housewives.
Okay.
Well, hello, Doodles. Yes, you see.
And I think that's about all the news that's fit to print this week.
Remember to go vote, children.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I was gonna say I put in my mail-in ballot because I have a complicated situation where I officially live in Pinal County. So I have it set up so that I'm on mail-in system, so that I don't have to get side eye from the assholes up at Saddlebrook.
Yeah.
The octogenarians running the polling station up there look at me like, what's this boy doing up here? What's this wee young lad of 47 doing up here?
Yeah.
In a 55 and over community. And I'm like, well, it's complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated.
And the Republican state legislature of Arizona did try to disenfranchise me once before. They sent the gnarliest poll worker, aka postal worker, to interview me at my home to verify that I was legitimate. And I'm like, you guys really like wasting money to try to get people who are liberal voters off the rolls, don't you?
Yeah. They hate us so much.
Literally re-registered with the same information, and they sent me a ballot.
Of course.
So, fuck them.
Anyway.
So I will be joining you in the battle against fascism, Adam.
Indeed.
All right. I think that does it for this show. Now, we have one more show this week that's actually going to be our Friday season finale part 2. And Adam, if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Well, if everything goes right, because once again...
Shit. We're losing Adam again.
Can be a thing.
Yep.
Hang on.
We lost half of what you said there. Sorry.
Yeah,
if everything goes right, and then silence.
Right. Am I coming in now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Okay. Sorry. I got to find the right app. Open that. Anyway, we will be welcoming Peter Hart, creator of the Valor comic series, which recently had a Kickstarter campaign, as well as the upcoming The Boy Who Inherited the Earth. Once again, this is if everything goes according to plan, because he hasn't responded to my most recent text. So, but it's not Friday yet,
So, what time is the show supposed to be?
which is why we
11 a.m. Eastern, which is what, 3 hours off for you?
hello.
Yeah.
We now can hear you, Adam.
Yeah, you keep popping in and out, man.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. How much of that did you get?
You said it wasn't Friday yet. I'm trying to remember because Golix jumped in and told me about the time frame.
Yeah.
You said
Anyway,
that it's you haven't heard back from him last time. He hasn't responded to your last email yet, but it's not the day of yet, so who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So
if all goes
8
well,
a.m. Pacific.
yes. Like I said, I'll probably ping him again the day of, as I usually do that with guests. I'm like, but we'll see how this goes.
All right.
And I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, thanks again to David Mathis of Random Stranger and Famidaily for being on the show, and we will hopefully have more information on Friday as to what's going on with part 2 of the season finale. But until then, I'm your host, Mac Paladin. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, kids.